So,
All right.
my name is Fletcher Wimbush. I'm have a number of hiring and talent acquisition software products and tools and services. Today, I really want to talk about the IntegrityFirst product. Is a product that joined our family of products about a year and a half ago. It's a 45-year-old product, and it's really found its fame in the work comp space and its impact in being able to reduce work comp claims, particularly from new hires. So it makes it a great product for any sort of insurance brokers commercial insurance brokers, anybody who focuses on work comp or risk management. And it's a great tool for them to leverage in starting conversations with prospective clients, adding value to existing client relationships. So it ultimately helps them win business and retain business when their clients are having challenges, particularly in the work comp area, but also in the employee retention. So typically this product is used with frontline workers. So again, the big claim to fame is, 45 years, it roughly reduces work comp claims from new hires by 50%. Some of the folks on our team that we work with, and our biggest kind of advocate and partner is a third-party risk management consultant that's selling this product, helping insurance brokers sell this product for many, many years. So what is integrity testing? It's a simple 7-minute online pre-hire assessment tool that screens out applicants with high-risk behaviors. The focus today is how insurance brokers, agents, insurance companies, program managers, captive managers, and other industry vendors can leverage this tool as a value add to help them win and retain more business. So we'll talk a little bit about that from that perspective in particular today. So, in talking to a highly successful insurance producer, since COVID hit, it's harder to get prospects to meet, look at new ideas or consider brokerage relationships unless there's significant pain. So some of the sentiment that we've heard from producers is their ability to get in the door and start conversations with new prospective customers has been very, very difficult in the last couple of years. IntegrityFirst is a tool of many potential tools that a producer or insurance company can use to capture the attention of prospective clients, because it makes such a big impact on their bottom line. And it's a unique product that many of their clients may not have ever heard of, right? So when you're dealing with insurance products, a lot of times it's highly commoditized. What makes your product better or different than another? It's oftentimes relationships and the ideas and the unique value proposition or ability to bring creative ideas and solutions to the client's business that another broker has overlooked or is not presenting, right?
Fletcher, before you go any farther, I just wanted to sort of say, have you tracked, or do you know what the workers' comp claims is it drastically increasing, decreasing, holding still?
Yeah, I mean, we'll skip to that in the next. The next slide addresses that here. Yeah, I mean, I've covered this ultimately, right? It's going to improve your client's results, right? They're going to reduce the number, the frequency, the severity of claim. They're going to reduce turnover on average by 30%. So this has a huge impact on the client's bottom lines, right? It's used to create ways, new business opportunities, improve retention, improve the effectiveness and efficiency of existing risk management resources and tools. So, risk management there's not a single solution necessarily, but there's lots of things you should be doing. And this will help whatever other programs or other tools, whether it's adding in a better TPA or safety program or any other kind of claims management, and bringing in nurses, nurse triage or doctor triage, anything else that you're doing, this is going to magnify the results of those other risk management programs or tools or strategies that you might be suggesting or implementing, or that the client might already have in place, right? So there's kind of three big things there. And yeah, really to your question, David, is, what are kind of the numbers here, right? And
Mhm.
Travelers is the largest work comp provider in the country, maybe the world. And their last year's study of work comp claims, their impact report found that new employees, irregardless of experience. So if you hire a carpenter who has experience as a carpenter, doesn't matter. There's a kind of a long-standing myth that when you bring people into your industry, if they don't have any prior experience in that industry, that they're more likely to become a work comp claim. This basically sort of totally debunks that myth. If they're new to your company, they are a much higher risk of becoming a work comp claim. So the key findings, right, is 34% of workplace injuries occurred within the first year of an employee being employed within the company, right? So a third of claims occur from people who've only been on the job for a year or less with organizations. And that's across the board, right? And that's resulting in missed work days, obviously increased mod rates, or if you're in a captive or you're self-insured, increased reserves, things like that. When you get into frontline workers in particular, these numbers are huge, right? So first year hires, people less than 12 months on the job in the hospitality world, 53% of claims come from people who've been on the job less than a year. That makes up 40% of the claims costs. Logistics, warehouse, light industrial, construction, 40% of claims come from new hires, 40% of the claims costs. So this is just straight from Travelers' impact report. So a high percentage of claims are coming from these new hires, irregardless of their experience. And so if you can make a dent in reducing this by half, you're making a huge impact in your client's bottom line, let alone all the headaches that they deal with. I mean, anytime somebody becomes a work comp claims, miss work days, there's more overtime, other people having to pick up the slack. There's just kind of the emotional and psychological toll that takes on an organization, the administrative burden of the management, HR staff, things like that. So there's a lot of hidden costs to a claim occurring within the business. So that's not even really accounted for in these claims costs. This is just direct costs, right? So if you can make a huge impact there, you're in those new hires, the quality of hires, the likelihood those hires become a claim, obviously you're making a huge impact in your client's business. And you're becoming a value added service provider as opposed to a commodity service provider, right? And again, as I mentioned before, we're not saying don't do all these things, but if you start to break down all of these different strategies that you can use in order to reduce claims costs, claim frequencies, severity of claims, program costs, right? So you start to go through these things. Every single one of these things is an extraordinarily costly, time-consuming, labor-intensive strategy to help mitigate these costs. And you need to be running many of these depending on the situation that you're in, right? You need to be thinking about how to implement and execute these things. But a lot of these things take time, money, resources, effort to get implemented. So they don't make a fast impact, right? Integrity testing has as big or bigger impact than any one of these single items do alone, and often combined can have a bigger impact than almost all of these things combined. And when used in conjunction can have a massive impact in the reduction of the claim frequency, severity, and the costs of these work comp programs. And that gets even bigger when you're in captive and self-insured. But even in folks that have experience mods, if you can reduce that from a 1.3 down to a 0.7 over a period of time, that has a huge impact in that company's bottom line ability to operate. So has huge results. And so that's why insurance brokers, insurance companies such as Zurich, Lockton, Captive Resources, Insurance Offices of America, list goes on. Marsh, Alliant, they're all producers from these companies are all promoting this product to their clients to win and retain that business, right? So there's kind of a new feeling in the kind of work comp workspace. There's a growing recognition that medical issues aren't hindering recovery nearly as much as psychosocial ones. And it's the perception of the person and their pain or the impact that injury has had on them, and their belief in using the work comp system as a way to get treated for not just an acute issue that may or may not have happened at work, but other issues, medical issues that they might be having. So folks that have kind of a predisposed psychosocial perception that the work comp program is there to help them address any and all medical issues, and that it is more of a social right versus a program that's in place to help address real workplace issues, is a growing kind of issue there. So, and it feeds into this problem where it seems like personnel problems are becoming work comp problems. Bad employees sure make terrible claimants. So a large drywall contractor who used the product said this. And anybody who's managed work comp claims, anybody who's insurance broker, or anybody who's looked into these claims, often will see stories about how this person was unreliable, they showed up late, they had problematic behaviors before they became a work comp claim. And once they became a work comp claim, these are the folks that are hard to get into the program, hard to get treatment. Some of these people are the types that call the attorney before they go to the doctor. They're the ones that are ultimately difficult to get back to work and through the treatment programs or through the work comp system, and they become ultimately terrible nightmare claimants, right? And they're ones that are
and not only claimants, Richard, that's just not a good team partner. That's not like there's the whole soft costs that are associated with that, and those folks are not the people that you want to work beside, right? So huge.
I mean, that's it. And those are obviously harder to measure, but you see that in retention, right? If retention being reduced usually means that you like the people that are in your team. You're not dismissing them. They're not quitting without notice, things like that, right? And they're not generally just difficult people that you're having to manage out, things like that, or they're not driving away high quality people, right? When you have folks with low integrity, who have bad attitudes, who are problematic employees, those are the folks that, make your managers quit, make your other team members quit. They're the ones that keep all of us up at night, right? How do I deal with Joe, the problem generator, right? Or the culture vampire, as I like to call them. Those are, so they're hard to measure that, but it's a big impact, right? So, so working with 7 different major insurance carriers I named before, doing on-site team presentations. Ultimately the finding is that risk management presentations are pedestrian at best. So one of the programs here, and probably we're going to try to cover, is some of the things that you can do to help uncover the need for this type of product. And we're also, again, willing to support and help insurance brokers present this product to their clients and help them dig deeper into their clients' risk management program so that they can identify real areas of improvement. And again, all of that helps brokers add value to that client relationship and differentiate a commoditized product from a value-added product. So one of the things we found is, a lot of times insurers, they often bring up integrity testing, but nobody can really talk to the subject. None of them identified 70% of the claims are coming from new hires. So this is really the first place. If you're a broker, you want to look at where your client's claims are coming from. And if those claims are coming from a high percentage of those claims, 20, 30, 40, 50% of those claims are coming from new hires, that is the first clue that IntegrityFirst is a tool that you might want to look at. The next piece of that is digging into those claims and looking at why those claims happened. And I think if you begin to look at those, you will uncover that a lot of those claims were problematic employees. And so if you can bring that to your client and show them, hey, this claim was a problem employee long before they became a claim. And by the way, they're a problematic claimant too. And you can start to show them those stories within their own data. That's how you really get their attention. And when you start to talk about integrity testing, they're going to say, now it makes sense. I get why I might want to start using that. But it really is important to dig into where these claims are coming from. Are they coming from new hires? And if they are, dig into the actual claim details in the employees' files to uncover what kind of an employee and what kind of a claimant they were, and begin to tell those stories. And then when you introduce IntegrityFirst, it almost becomes a no-brainer at that point, right?
Totally.
Another big complaint is, this has been presented at the National RIMS presentation, integrity testing, a magazine interview of 3 industry experts who say, we love the product, but we can't get our clients to buy it. HR is the issue. So another area to look at is, ideally, you want to be talking to the CFO or CEO or COO and introducing these problematic claims to them. And introducing the numbers and the facts, because these people are the ones that are looking at the bigger picture and they're looking at the financial costs. HR is usually somewhat insulated from that stuff. And they're also typically don't have a lot of buying power and pervasive authority within an organization. They are obviously part of the equation and they become influencers, but this product gets a lot of legs when it's introduced from the top down. And again, oftentimes in the insurance world, that's a CFO. Sometimes it's a CEO. All right. And so if you can, begin to show the CFO and the CEO, hey, 40% of your claims are coming from new hires. And by the way, here's 5 claims that you had in the last year or two that these people never should have been hired to begin with. And look how problematic they were throughout their entire employment and into the claim process. This is what this tool deals with, right? The other part of that case study is beginning to look at their turnover rate, right? So if your client has high turnover, they probably also have high work comp frequency. So you want to get into those numbers with them and not overlook that piece of the equation. So start asking them questions. Well, what percentage of your new hires turnover make it a year? Or what's your turnover rate, right? And if you're finding a 30+% turnover rate in their frontline workforce, you're talking about huge potential cost savings. So just, again, an additional benefit. So SHRM has an estimate of $3,800 per hire is just the hard cost of hiring. Cornell has a number from frontline restaurant industry of $5,800, on warehouse and drivers, $8,500. So you can look at turnover costs. If you have 50% turnover, is in the low estimate running almost 2 million, almost 3 million, just over 4 million. Just in hard costs on turnover, if you can reduce those numbers by 30%, which is the average reduction seen by organizations who introduce IntegrityFirst to their suite of products, you're looking at a bottom line savings of over $500,000, almost $1 million, and a little over almost 1.3 million, right? And at an annual cost of $4,000 a month, you're talking about a net ROI in the 1,000 to 2,500%, right? So huge ROI just on the turnover rate alone and what the tool can do there. And that's before we even begin to talk about the reduction of work comp, right? So what is it? It's an integrity test. So it's an online pre-employment assessment. It takes on average 7 to 8 minutes to complete. It's 54 questions, 5th grade reading level. It's in 27 different languages, most commonly used in English and Spanish. The results are instant. The candidates come back as either qualified or unqualified, and you have no obligation to share those results with the applicant. So unlike drug testing, background checks, or other types of screening, you have no obligation to share those results, right? So it's a very, very simple tool. It is both compliant and validated. So the EEOC requires that a test must be either non-discriminatory or validated to be compliant. IntegrityFirst is both. So it meets what I call the platinum standard of compliance when it comes to the EEOC and sort of all the state and local guidelines. It's really fantastic now these days with marijuana being legal in so many states. California actually now prohibits employers from not hiring people for using marijuana when they're not at work. Obviously, just like alcohol, you cannot use any sort of drugs while you're at work, operating dangerous equipment, things like that. This is a fantastic tool because it screens people for on-the-job use of things like alcohol and marijuana, and that is a legal way to screen candidates out who are going to show up to work high. A really funny little anecdotal story happened to me. I have a friend who owns a auto body shop in Central California, and we're helping them overhaul their hiring process, hiring systems, and they're hiring an intern to work in their auto body shop. So they're paint, heavy equipment, dangerous environment, like a lot of places where somebody can get hurt or get injured in that type of environment, right? And they had this kid that they've been eyeing as a potential intern for them. They had met the guy a couple times, and they liked him, right? They sort of had a favorable feeling about this person, and were excited to hire him. And so they had the kid complete the integrity test. He fails the integrity test for lying, not for drugs, but for lying. And that's a common issue here, right? So people will try to lie their way through the test, and we catch them for lying, and you don't hire those people. So they're like, well, we like the kid. I know he failed the test, but let's bring him in for an interview anyways, right? Kid comes in reeking like pot. That's it. Not hired, right? And all of that could have been prevented, right? We could have saved the interview. We didn't have to spend the time with this. Now, this is a common story. Hiring manager loves somebody for some particular reason, and they fail this. This happened again. Another little case study is, it's a food and beverage director trying to hire a chef for a country club. Has the guy picked out, wants to hire the guy, sends him through the integrity test. He fails for admitting to using cocaine. So don't hire him. No, the guy's great. You got to hire him. I love him. We need to hire the guy, bring him in for an interview, goes through the interview process, makes the offer, sends him for drug testing. And what do you think happens? Fails for cocaine. Right? So it is a remarkable what they can do. So again, impact studies. The latest study has been published in the Business of Journal and Science. And this was based on 550,000 data points and across all these different industries: staffing, healthcare, food processing, retail, manufacturing, hospitality, construction, you name it, all these kind of light industrial frontline workers. And it found a 48% reduction in work comp claim frequency, 19% reduction in claim severity, and a 30% reduction in turnover. So this was peer reviewed by scientists and based on a massive number of data points. So, and it's really interesting. Every time we do one of these mini case studies, we find very similar numbers. So here's a client impact study. This is a big janitorial company who services like the airports. They have massive workforces here. They implemented IntegrityFirst, and they saw 180% improvement of employee retention. So In 2013, they retained only 18% of their staff. In 2014, they retained almost 50% of their staff. It was a major improvement. Millions and millions of dollars were saved. They actually tracked the reasons why people turned over, right? So things like attendance, their contract ended, failure to leave from return, quit without notice, obviously big, resign without notice, kind of similar, violation of company policy. So you see the gray bars were 2013 numbers across the board. It didn't matter what the reason was. There was massive reductions in the reasons why these people were terminated. So either voluntary resignation or involuntary termination, right? All of those were reduced dramatically through the implementation of that. This is another interesting case study. This was a massive pest control company. They implemented the test. They used it for a year. They hired everybody, whether they were qualified or unqualified. We don't recommend doing this because this is an overt integrity test. The person's going to tell you, I use cocaine, I smoke pot at work, I drink on the job, I steal from my employer, whatever it is, they're going to tell you these things on the test. And if somebody tells you that and you knowingly hire them, then you definitely have some potential liability there. So again, don't recommend you hiring somebody that becomes unqualified using this test, but they did it anyway. So they did a blind study, and their turnover rate for qualified people was only 25%, for unqualified was 65%. So massive difference. The unqualified people turned over much higher rates. 98% of the qualified candidates were graded either as an A or B by their managers. So they were graded highly favorably at an overwhelming rate, right? Terminated employees were usually discharged for the reasons why they were unqualified. 75% of at-fault auto accidents were committed by those who were unqualified. Unqualified candidates were much more likely to quit without notice. The only work comp claims that became that were turned in by people who were unqualified. So, I mean, this case study is pretty crazy. And these case studies go on and on, right? So what's the difference? I mentioned this before. IntegrityFirst is an overt integrity test. So there are covert ones that are more personality based, more inferring whether somebody may or may not have risky behaviors. The overt is really self-admitting. So again, this is the power and why this is such a powerful tool, and why it's so compliant, because people self-admit to these negative and these problematic behaviors. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If somebody is disqualified, they are telling you that they are hostile, they do drugs on the job, that they steal from their employers, and that they lie. And so it makes it very defensible. Here's kind of an example of how overt these questions are. So here's relates to drug use, excluding pills you got from a doctor, prescriptions. Which of the following drugs do you use? And obviously, if somebody tells you they use one of these drugs, then they should be omitted from employment. Have you ever pretended to have a work comp claim in order to collect work comp insurance? Oh, I've only done it once, but I know Mary does it all the time. So problematic. How often have you hit somebody in anger? Oh, every once in a while. Obviously a problematic employee. Obviously, workplace violence is a serious issue. Just last year, several incidents of workplace shootings and workplace violence. You've probably heard about. These are things that we wish that hopefully nobody ever experiences, right? So we start to get into the lying side of this. So the lying part's interesting. We asked 14 questions that get at lying. The person has to fail every single one of these questions. So an example of a question might be, though, how often have you told a lie since the age of 16? If you tell me never, ever, ever, you've never told a lie, you've never done anything wrong, you've never hurt anybody's feelings, you've never made a mistake, you're basically not a human being, then we know you're lying, right? So it takes a lot for somebody to be disqualified for lying. But, again, if somebody has, if you're the one person who's never told a lie since you were 16, so be it. But again, if 14 more questions keep telling us that you've never done anything wrong, then we now know you're definitely lying. You've either lied your way through the assessment, or you're going to be a liar once you get on the job, right? And these tend to be some of the most problematic employees. So why would somebody admit to these high-risk behaviors? Well, the scientific psychological term for this is cognitive dissonance. So these people who do these things, they rationalize their risky behavior. So retail theft, right? These rings of people who go in and like steal from stores. If you interview these people, they think they have a right to do this. They think they're justified in what they're doing. They're stealing from the rich. It's not hurting anybody. They have a right to do this. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. They've justified their behavior, right? So people who steal from their employer, right? Well, I took, some tools from my employer. They didn't need them. They've got plenty of tools. They've got plenty of money. A $300 drill from my employer, no big deal, right? And by the way, David's doing it all the time. I see him. Everybody else is doing it. They're justifying their behavior. I don't know. I love the pothead one. I think we've all met potheads in our lives. They're stoned all the time. They think they operate better when they're stoned. So like the example I gave earlier, the kid who shows up to the interview high, right? He probably believes that he is going to function better in that interview when he's stoned than when he's not stoned, right? And he's justifying that he needs to be high in order to function better on the job, right? So that's a form of that. All right. Maybe an easier example to wrap your head around cognitive dissonance. What about speeding? This is not on the test, but what about speeding, right? David, do you ever drive above the speed limit?
I have many times, yes.
Okay. But it's wrong, right?
Yes.
It's illegal, and it's dangerous.
And
right?
sometimes the police have even told me that when they pulled me over for it. But
And you probably thought to yourself, well, everybody else is doing it.
yeah, or I was not going to get caught,
Yeah.
whatever. I justified it, right?
Yeah, you do it all the
There are
time.
times fully admit that you look down and go, oh, I didn't mean to be going that fast, right? But I have knowingly sped, not so much in the past couple of years, but definitely happened over my life for sure.
Yeah. Everybody else is doing it. I'm just going with the flow of traffic. If you're driving the speed limit, everybody else is going to get mad. I've never gotten in a car accident. Slow drivers are dangerous. These are all kind of, things that people tell us. All things that my wife tells me for sure. When I'm driving, 10 miles above the speed limit, she tells me go faster, go faster, go faster. And actually, the fact is speed kills more people than any other, driving under the influence or any other driving behavior, right? So we all know it's wrong, but we all sort of, it's pretty common for people to have cognitive dissonance around speeding, right? So this is an example of how people justify that. Well, people justify drug use, stealing from their employers, being violent, hitting people as a way to resolve their issues. And that lying is the way to kind of get through life, right? So people justify these things, and it seems inconceivable, but the fact is, after millions of data points of millions of uses of this product, 23% of people admit to these behaviors. And I go into organizations and they almost never believe this is going to be true. I prove to them within 1 week, these numbers are true every single time. So we implement the test. Within a week, they put hundreds of candidates through the assessment, and they almost always hit right in within a few percentage points of this 23% failure rate. And they fail 5% of the time for drug use, 8% of the time for theft, 12% for lying, faking, 1% for hostility. Thank God that number is not higher, right? And you'll say, well, that doesn't add up to 23%. So people fail for multiple reasons sometimes, right? They might fail for drug use and theft, right? Or something like that. So it's undeniable that people will admit to this, and that you will screen out a substantial portion of people who have these behaviors. Another side effect is usually, almost always, these are done in conjunction with background checks and drug tests, or one or both of those items. When people who use this see their drug test fail rates plummet by 5 to 10x. So the problem with drug testing, you got to do it. I'm not saying don't. Absolutely, you should be doing drug testing, pre-hire drug testing, and random drug testing, especially if you're hiring in these populations, these frontline workers. But the problem with drug testing is something has to be done as part of a conditional offer. So imagine getting somebody through all the way through the hiring process. You hire them, you make an offer, you send them to the clinic. They go to the clinic, say tomorrow. The clinic gets back to you the day after and says, hey, Joe failed his drug test and you can no longer hire him. Well, what kind of pressure does that put on your recruiting and HR and hiring managers? Well, they got to go back to the drawing board and go find a new hire. So now you've been down a worker for however long you were down, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. You got to the end of the process. You thought you made your hire. You took your foot off the pedal in your hiring, only to find out that you have to start all over again, right? So one of the last studies I want to share with you here, this is a massive employer. They do senior care, so they have like hospice and in-home care and other kind of senior care type services. They've got 10,000 plus employees. They have a program with over 5,000 work comp claims and over 40 million in losses. So before introducing integrity testing, 33% of their losses came from new hires. After testing, 18%. So they implemented this before COVID. COVID hit, they couldn't find any workers. So imagine being in senior care, it was very difficult to find workers. So they decided to stop doing the testing. Their numbers shot back up to 38%. They did a pilot in a smaller group and it started pretty similar numbers, but 35% of their claims were coming from new hires, plummeted down to 23, skyrocketed up to. So the pilot was actually in the program longer, and their numbers really skyrocketed after stopping using the integrity test. Since have restarted the program as things settled down after COVID. But this is a really interesting case study. We've never had one like that before, right? Where you had a before, after, and now beginning again type of program, right? So for providers, if you're interested, we can help you set up with these really great ROI analysis, but the ROI analysis are massive. Number of new, you just look at the number of new hires. So one of the things you want to know when presenting IntegrityFirst is how many new hires you have. Take a number. Again, the SHRM number is about 4,250. If you want to cut that in half and be more conservative, your turnover costs in a scenario like this is 1.7 million to 850,000. If you can reduce 30% to 20%, again, your savings just in turnover alone is somewhere between 127,000 and $500,000, right? Projected work comp, 800,000. If you can reduce those claims by 40%, you're reducing 320,000, and a 30% reduction. You have an additional 96. So basically the turnover cost savings can really outweigh the work comp savings by a lot in many cases. Depending on the program, though, both can be quite impactful. So you're talking about between 200,000 and 600,000 in an organization hiring 400 people. If the cost of a new hire using integrity testing is $50 per hire, this is pretty high actually for this scenario. Cost them, $1,800 a month to use this program. You're having somewhere between a 9-to-1 to a 30-to-1 return on investment by implementing this. And that, again, you don't even talk about the soft costs, right? That David, we talked about earlier, the headaches.
Yeah, which could very easily double.
Yeah. And we don't talk about them because they're hard to measure, but they're real, right?
Well,
we do talk about it, but when in an ROI analysis, they're hard to put into numbers. But so it doesn't really matter. You talk about the soft costs, you talk about the hard costs. There's just a huge ROI. And imagine the transformation an organization would make by implementing a tool like this. And so here's, the whole recipe, right? So here are all the different things that, we talked about earlier that you can do to make an impact in somebody's work comp claim or work comp program, right? And there are, I don't know, 40 different things in here that you might want to consider. Integrity testing is one of the simplest things that you can implement, right? And what we'll do for larger employers, we partner with brokers and we'll come in and help do a whiteboard study and help do this analysis. So one of the reasons, why brokers like us so much, we can come in and we'll come in and do the audit, and we'll audit all of these things going on inside of your client's business. And we'll come back with a set of recommendations. So it takes the heavy lifting off the broker, but it also makes the broker look really, really good when they come back and they say, hey, there's deficiencies in, the business plan not supporting a safe work environment or something, right? And here is a recipe to help enhance your business plan, right? Or, hey, here is your hiring process, and, introducing integrity testing can make a big impact, things like that, right? So, or on claims management, like evaluating the return to work or their claims management process or their TPAs, right? And all these different things that you can do, and looking at all these different vendors or different services that may or may not be being done or done well, but introducing these different programs or different services that can all make an incremental impact. And really, for organizations that are serious about this, if they begin their journey with, say, integrity testing, and they begin to chip away at these other things, they can almost, in some cases, virtually eliminate almost all work comp claims, or reduce the volume by huge numbers and reduce the cost by massive amounts. So feel free to reach out to us and talk about that anytime you want. If you're watching a recording of this, a link to schedule a call or to learn more, or obviously our contact information is here below. You can reach out to us at any time. And again, we'd be happy to support you or your clients in this journey of reducing turnover and knocking work comp claims out. And always happy to support and help you win business or help you retain or salvage a client that might be having a lot of problems.
That's awesome, Fletcher. So can you do me a favor? Can you go back to the last slide, right? So I just want to talk about this, and so really what I see here is brokers need to take that extra step to make this happen, right? Because the reality is, if they go to their contacts that they've been working with, there's a good likelihood that they're not involved in the hiring process, and so they need to sort of go to take that next step up to the CEO or CFO and get this introduced through the organization, which is a great opportunity for these brokers, because truthfully, if they don't have a relationship with a CEO or CFO and come in year over year with increases on their benefit plans, it would be nice to make face and say, hey, we saved you a whole bunch of money at some point too, right? So I think it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah.
Is that what you find from a broker involvement?
Yeah, I mean, and what we teach brokers, though, is how to inspect all of these different components of the business. And oftentimes a lot of these are overlooked by brokers. They don't, necessarily have thought about, hey, let me look at the return to work program. Let me work at the safety program. Let me look at the hiring process. So doing an assessment and audit of all of these things, also, it gives you access to lots of different people within the organization, but it helps you identify areas for improvement. So if I'm a broker and I've got a new prospective client and I say, look, I'm going to do a free audit and assessment of your current program, and here are all the areas that I'm going to inspect. And when I come back, I'm going to be able to make a number of recommendations that you can use to reduce the frequency of claims and the cost of your work comp program. And also, one of the other benefits will be is a reduction in turnover and improvement of company culture, right? And if I can't find anything, if your program's working perfectly, then I'm going to come back and let you know that. But if it's not, or maybe there's a few things, either way, you're going to get value out of this. So, it's a no cost or a low cost program, depending on the size and the depth of the assessment that they do. And no matter what, the organization is going to get value out of giving me access to all of these different programs and people in the organization that are doing these things. And it allows for deep discovery into the organization, how it operates. And then it allows for really thoughtful, value added recommendations that again helps you separate you from a commodity provider to a value service provider, right? Which
totally.
is how those strong relationships can be formed and how you are ultimately going to win business, especially when you're talking about large programs, right? You're talking about larger employers, run of the mill, just my rate against their rate's not going to win the business, right?
Not long term. Eventually, you're going to get kicked off the block. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And if their costs are going up every year, I'm sure the CFO and the CEO are looking at it going like, why are my costs going up year over year on my work comp program? And, typical broker's going to be like, well, inflation and, different, assessments or, underwriting rules and all these different, kind of things. They're going to, blame all that stuff. But if instead they say, hey, why don't we take a proactive approach and identify what's driving these costs and let me help you reduce them through identifying, key things out of these buckets of tools or strategies that can make a big impact. And again, IntegrityFirst is one of the simplest things they can introduce. It's a 7-minute survey they give to all applicants. It's super simple. You just send the candidate a link. They click the link. They complete the survey. They qualified, disqualified. Don't entertain the disqualified people. Move the rest of the people through your normal hiring process, and you will see huge impact, right? Like if that's all you did.
Yeah, that's amazing, really. Yeah, the numbers are just staggering, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it feels like almost unbelievable, but I mean, the science behind it has been proven, peer reviewed. The case studies go on and on and on. We went through several of them today, right? And typically, new clients, we do a case study with every new client. It's important to us that we collect these metrics that we talked about up front.
Mhm.
And then, 6 months, 12 months down the road, we then reevaluate, hey, what was the impact? So again, it's
Yeah.
done in a metric performance-based model so that there's real tangible results to discuss and review with people.
Yeah, and I know it from a previous earlier conversation. I can't recall the number, but you mentioned something about data points, and it was just like astronomical how many data points you have here, that I'll factor into these. I don't know if you recall what that number was, but it was in the 100 millions or something, wasn't
Oh,
it?
yeah. Oh, trillions. Yeah. I mean, I mean, Gallup looked at some data and did an evaluation of the U.S. global market in terms of, turnover rates. And they figured, I think it was like the average turnover rate, was 20%. And that's costing U.S. employers something like $1.1 trillion. Another really large study was done on turnover and why turnover happened, and they found 46% of people turned over because they were poor culture fits, right?
Mhm.
So 20%. If the average employer has 20% turnover, half of that is due to poor hiring and culture fits, right? So you could cut that 1.1 trillion to $500 billion just through making better culture fit hires, and integrity testing is the cornerstone. I don't know a single organization that doesn't have some form of integrity as part of their core values. Call it whatever you want, honesty, whatever, do the right thing, integrity. I mean, if you're listening to this, look at your own core values. Look at every one of your clients, are usually on their website somewhere, right? They're going to have some flavor of integrity as a core value.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's awesome. That's good. And like you said before, contact information, Calendly link, more details will be underneath wherever you're watching this. And reach out. It sounds like you have a full-on program that can help them bring it to customers, help you guys help your customers. And it doesn't really seem like there's anything to lose at all by taking a look. And truthfully, it's also a way that you can make a little money, which is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. So let's not forget about that. There's no cost for you to join
Partner.
or be in the
No.
network or anything. You can, if they buy it, you can make money. And so
Yeah, our biggest partner is an ex-locked-in producer, and he's our, he generates hundreds of thousands a year in commissions for himself in promoting this product. But because he's such a close partner, he trains other insurance brokers how to sell this product and how to sell this solution here. Like, some of this stuff is outside of our purview, but he trains brokers on how to leverage these assessments to win business. And he does it for Locked In currently now, not as an employee, but as a consultant for them. So, I mean, this is what he does, is he teaches brokers how to sell value as opposed to the commodity side of it. And so we're happy to support and connect there, and happy to connect on the integrity side, or just, help consult or teach. We want to see brokers win and be successful, and, capturing business and doing it the right way, right? Not on just selling on price, right?
awesome. Good. Okay. Thanks everybody for your attendance, and we look forward to answering any questions you might have in the future.
Awesome.
All right, Fletcher, we got to jump on the other one. Do you want to have a bio break or anything first?
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick break and then I'll jump on the next one.
Okay, perfect. You can just shut it down.